Hey race fans, I'm Jason Shandler with Triple Crown Talk for Bloodhorse.com. Here to talk about the Florida Derby, easily this year's most intriguing Kentucky Derby prep race. From a handicapping standpoint, this race presented a ton of challenges to bettors, and not just because there was a full field of 12 entered. More than any other prep race in recent memory, there seemed to be so many variables involved in the Florida Derby. First, we had 5 different horses coming off allowance wins to consider, most notably Big Brown, who was the buzz horse ever since demolishing the field by 13 lengths back on March 5th at Gulfstream. Bettors thought so much of Big Brown that he went off as a 3-2 favorite in the Florida Derby, despite drawing post 12, which is normally suicide at Gulfstream Park. But the questions were, how would he fare in just his 3rd career start, and when facing graded stakes competition for the first time? Also presenting the unknown was Tomcito, the Kentucky-bred colt who made all 5 of his starts in Peru, where he won 4 times, including the Group 1 Derby Nacional by 3.5 lengths. But that was way back in November. How would he do off a long layoff and against American colts? And then there was Sam Davis winner Fierce Wind, who came in carrying a 3-race win streak, Hutchinson winner Smooth Air, who was 3rd in the Sam Davis, and Elysium Fields, the Barkley tag trainee who was so impressive in his stakes debut when he finished 2nd to Cool Coleman. Elysium Fields was made the 2-1 second choice at post time in the Florida Derby. But perhaps the most intriguing part of the Florida Derby was that all 12 horses were in desperate need of graded stakes money in order to qualify for the Kentucky Derby. All of them were on the outside looking in prior to the event. So what happened? Well, it turned out that all the pre-race hype about Big Brown was indeed justified. Breaking from the outside, Big Brown battled face the cat to get the early lead around the first turn. And he did just that, making the turn sharply under DeSormo and grabbing the early lead. I have to say, when I saw him post an opening quarter of 22-3, I was concerned. Normally, that is suicide in a 1 1/8 event. Big Brown was being pressed in the early going by long shot Nissel's Crunch, and a little further back was Fierce Wind, Face the Cat, and Elysium Fields. Surprisingly, Tomcito was very slow around that first turn and was dead last. Again, I had my doubts when I saw Big Brown post a very quick 45 4/2 mile. But when he got to the 3/4 pole and kept extending, like everybody else, I thought, wow, this horse might be a monster. Those thoughts were confirmed as soon as I saw DeSormo peek back coming out of the final turn. I watched him do the same thing 3 weeks earlier when Big Brown won that allowance event in such dominating fashion. As soon as I saw Kent take that peek over his shoulder, it was over. The stretch was nothing more than a formality. It was kind of fun seeing a romp like that in the Florida Derby, which is not supposed to be won that easily. After watching a performance like that, there was nothing to say except wow. Maybe the most impressive thing to me about Big Brown was that he won by 5 lengths while drifting out in the stretch. You could tell that the boundary colt was a bit green and inexperienced. He's only going to get better. That is scary. Now, up until 6 weeks ago, the Kentucky Derby was not even on the minds of trainer Rick Dutrow and majority owner Mike Ivarone. Ivarone purchased a 75% interest in Big Brown after he broke his maiden by 11 lengths on the turf at Saratoga last September. After that impressive debut, it was discovered that Big Brown had a quarter crack in his right front foot. A month later, another quarter crack was found in his other foot, and Dutrow had to sideline him for 2 more months. It wasn't until mid-February that Dutrow brought Big Brown back into training. He convinced Ivarone to try that allowance race at Gulfstream on March 5th, and the rest is history. Now, when I talked to Ivarone earlier this month, he was extremely confident about this colt, almost cocky. He said Dutrow and DeSormo were going to stay in the U.S. for the Florida Derby rather than go to the Dubai World Cup, because this horse was too special to leave. Obviously, Ivarone wasn't blowing smoke. In fact, when I read after the race that DeSormo said this might be the best horse I've ever ridden, I had to do a double take. Don't forget, DeSormo has won Kentucky Derbies with Real Quiet and Fusaigi Pegasus. Is Big Brown that good? We'll find out in 5 weeks. Until next time, I'm Jason Shandler for Bloodhorse.com. Good day and good racing.